As you know, there are many churches who have elders, but they have rotating elders. That is, they bring somebody on the elder board, and they might be on the elder board for 3 years, and then they have to actually go off the board. For some, they have to go off for a year, maybe more. For some, they could actually be voted right back on the board. What are your thoughts as it relates to such a model of eldership?
I think we have to start, in my mind, and I know this is where you are as well, you have to start by saying, is this what the scriptures teach? You won't find this anywhere. So it's not that this is in any way prescribed by the scripture. So you do have to say that there is latitude for an individual church to make that decision. Just like with every moral decision, if it's not addressed chapter and verse in the Bible, it's an issue of conscience. In the case of a church and its decisions, it's an issue of conscience for the entire elder board to weigh in on and decide. So it's not that a church can't do this. The bigger question is it a good idea? And why is it a bad idea? And that's where I would be. I think, obviously, many churches have chosen to do it. But the question in my mind is why have they chosen to do it? And I think by and large, and you and I have talked about this, by and large, it's because they don't want to find themselves in the position with a rogue elder and one they have to go and address individually and deal with through a discipline process. They'd rather it just come up naturally, where at the end of that 3 years, if he's a problem, he just drops off and we don't have to deal with it. That's not first of all, it's not healthy for the church, but secondly, it's not even healthy for the guy. If there's significant problems in either his personality, his character, his ministry, those need to be addressed for his sake. And so it's kind of it can be, and I'm not saying this is true for every church that has the rotating model. There are obviously other reasons, but I think often it's because of that very practical consideration. The problem with that is, and you and I were just talking about this, not that many leaders are available in a given church. So you end up rotating off some of your best and most productive, most gifted elders, and you lose them potentially for a year or longer. Maybe they're off for a year and they're like, wow, this is nice. I don't have all that heavy responsibility and for maybe wrong decisions or for bad reasons, they make a wrong decision or maybe just their circumstances change and you've lost them as an elder. And so you end up losing some of the accumulated experience that an elder board gains, as well as the collective wisdom that they've gained working together through the years. And so you constantly have this turnover. I mean, think about it very practically. Imagine if your church staff did that. Every 3 years, we're going to change church staff. Well, unfortunately, it happens in some churches, but not intentionally.
Right.
That would be a nightmare. Well, it's really no less of a nightmare in many churches. And so I think it's well-intentioned in some regard, but you can determine whether a guy still meets the qualifications for an elder without having him rotate off or come up for a vote. You can have elder review. If there's a problem with an individual elder, that can be addressed by some of the other elders. All those issues can be addressed without a rotation system.
Yeah. It also seems like if you have a substantial process to make sure man is qualified and equip him for eldership, then you've invested well in his life. So you're not really waiting for him to get on the elder board to determine, is this going to work or is this not going to work?
Yeah,
You've invested well, so you can avoid many of those problems on the front end.
And in the end, if you do that up front, if you choose a man and you've vetted him well, you've prepared him, you've trained him, you've worked through the process, then you know he's qualified. And when does an elder get to stop being an elder, biblically?
Right.
There's no warrant for that. A man who's been called and gifted by God to serve as an elder, the only way that changes, if there are truly mitigating circumstances in his life that force him for a time to step away, the Lord takes him, or there's some disqualifying factor in his life. I mean, those are, biblically speaking, the only sort of caveats or exceptions to an elder is an elder, and always will be unless there are one of those factors that come up.
Right. And the longer they're there, you benefit from the history that they have with the church, the long-term vision that they have for the church, the wisdom that they gain in years. Just seems like a lot of benefits to that long-term service.
I mean, do you see, I fully agree with that. And I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking of what are the other advantages? Do you see any other advantages to a rotating system than that sort of opportunity to check a guy and sort of reassess his qualification, or to get rid of a potential rogue elder?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've given that considerable thought. There are only two reasons that I can think of to do that, and one is if they're a problem, it's easy to get them off. The second one would be you have so many gifted men for eldership that you want to allow other men the opportunity, and it's like I've not seen that church yet.
Exactly. I'm still looking for that church.
Yeah.
Right.
So I do think it's good for churches to consider it, because I think a lot of times it's just historical. It's in their constitution, in their bylaws. This is the way they do it. They go through the difficulty of dealing with that year in and year out. And honestly, I think if guys would just think about that in more practical ways, they might consider changing their constitution or changing their bylaws in order to have a healthier situation in their church.
Well, I mean, you served here with me at Countryside for 17 years, and we don't have a rotating system, and we never had those kinds of issues that we needed to address. And if we did, you addressed them.
Right.
But instead, we had such rich fellowship because we had so much shared history, so much shared experience, and so much collective wisdom where we had worked through so many issues together. And we didn't lose that or a portion of that every 3 years.
Right. Yeah. It was such a huge blessing to the church.